Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Govberg, and thanks for logging on. Today we are looking at the Omega Speedmaster Dark Side of the Moon Vintage Black variant. You can see this 44.25mm ceramic Omega Speedmaster on our website, govbergwatches.com. And if you enjoy these videos and you want to see the latest news, views, reviews, and of course multimedia of luxury watches, please subscribe to our app, Govberg on Time. Now on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, you can get a load of one of the most recent additions to that Dark Side of the Moon family. The original Dark Side of the Moon was a sensation when about at Baselworld 2013. It was followed in 2014 by the Gray Side of the Moon, and in 2015, no fewer than 5 separate variants of the Side of the Moon launched at Baselworld, of which 4 were part of the Dark Side of the Moon family, and this is the vintage-inspired variant. Still 44.25mm across the round of the case. It's 16.5mm thick, and you can see that the case flanks have a little bit of a double cantilever to them. There's the case flank itself and the character line that runs horizontally across the wrist, and then there's the outcropping of the ceramic tachometer bezel itself. So this is going to be a challenging one to fit under the tightest dress sleeves or formal cuffs. Now the watch does have impressive span, but not overwhelming span. From lug to lug, it's actually a reasonably compact 50mm, so for a 44+mm watch, it actually has a nice tidy lug to lug span. Now the watch wears very light on the wrist. Like all of the full ceramic 44mm Speedmasters, this one isn't anywhere near as hefty as steel or precious metal would be, so it wears light and wieldy even if you have a smaller wrist like mine. Now the watch does have a wonderful vintage style semi-aged natural calf skin strap. Now it has a contrasting stitch, but even that contrasting stitch has a little bit of an ecru tone to it. It's got a little bit of a fade, a little bit of a yellowing. It matches the vintage theme of the watch quite well. Now what you're actually looking at here is a watch that nicely channels the what if thread of modern horology. We've seen a lot of watches from the very high end, such as MB&F and HYT, and also the meat of the market luxury standards like Omega, that essentially take something sort of whimsical, the idea of a vintage watch that never was. Effectively, what if we could take a Dark Side of the Moon and transport it back to 1957 when the very first Omega Speedmaster chronographs debuted? Well, you'd probably wind up with something that looks just like this. And in that flight of fancy, that whimsy, we nevertheless managed to execute a modern luxury watch. And that continues with the clasp of this particular reference. You can see it's a combination of both ceramic on the clasp itself with positive and secure twin trigger release, and a beautiful PVD titanium on the inside, very secure. You can see it also features a minderless strap system, such that any excess is actually tucked into the clasp itself, so there are no minders along either side of the strap to mar the strap itself, to clutter the aesthetic of the watch, or to wear prematurely. Also worth mentioning is the sheer construction quality of the strap, as it features a wonderful sort of gusset system whereby all of the perforations have reinforcements on both sides so that the pin buckle itself, located within the clasp, as you can see, will not actually gouge and disfigure the strap itself. This one's made for long-wearing durability, but you would expect no less of a ceramic watch. Now, everything you see here is ceramic. Case and tachometric bezel, of course, but also the dial itself. This is one of the unique features of modern Omega watches. Many of them feature dials composed of the same material as the case itself, and this is no exception. And in fact, just above the cannon pinion at center, if you look at the dial at the right angle, and it is a gloss ceramic dial, you can actually see the chemical composition name of the ceramic material itself. But the salient aspect of this dial is the simulated patina effect of the lume and the printing. All of the graphics are in a sort of subdued ecru tone that matches the fully luminescent tachometric scale, and these watches are a treat at night. Even the insert within the crown glows. They're very distinctive in day, more so by night. Now, the look of the watch is vintage, not just in the color of all the printing and the hands and the indices, but also in the twin register chronograph layout. Now, this is vintage inspired, but I should mention it is a tri-register chronograph with hours, minutes, and seconds. This is pulled off by placing chronograph seconds at center and then using a mono counter with the caliber 9300 chronograph at 3 o'clock. Now, it is a coaxial chronometer. It is an Omega exclusive movement. So the 9300 family features all of the Omega tricks. It has SI14 hairspring and balance, so it's anti-magnetic. In fact, it's more like amagnetic. It's free-sprung with a full balance bridge, so very robust. It's also a COSC certified Swiss chronometer, but it's also an in-house coaxial caliber, meaning that it was not derived from a non-coaxial caliber, as were the earlier caliber 2500 and 3300 family Omega calibers, time only and chronograph respectively. It's also a vertical clutch chronograph with a column wheel function selector. So when you actuate the chronograph itself, it's very crisp. It's also very positive, and with the vertical clutch, you do have a smooth start to the seconds hand. You can also leave it in action without wearing down a lateral clutch mechanism. That's one of the advantages of this architecture. Now, it does feature 2 barrels in series, and they're wound by a sealed and unlubricated ceramic bearing system, so low maintenance long term. Also boasts a 60-hour power reserve, far more than the industry standard 42. This is an impressive watch, effectively indelible. The advantage of the ceramic case and bezel is that it's virtually as scratch resistant as the sapphire crystal itself. So while this watch does have a little bit of a simulated vintage age to it, it isn't going to age any faster than it has to. This one's going to look good. And simulated patina, not the real thing, for a long time. You can see this Omega Speedmaster Dark Side of the Moon Vintage Black on our website, govbergwatches.com.